Let me introduce you to the new speaker for this second inspirational session of the day, Professor Dr. Paul Timmers. Professor Timmers is a leading voice in Europe on the intersection of geopolitics, cybersecurity, and technology. His credentials are quite impressive, so to say the least. He is currently visiting professor at the KU Leuven and the European University of Cyprus, as well as CEO of iivii, senior advisor at the European Policy Center, and he served as director at the European Commission. His work focuses on digital sovereignty, cybersecurity, and industrial policy, advising governments and think tanks across Europe. Today, he will share his insights on a topic that couldn't be more relevant as today, being geopolitics and sovereignty in a digital world. Professor, the stage is yours.
So I'm going to talk about a topic about which you didn't hear much today, which is about digital sovereignty. Very much so a topic that is in the attention. And what I will be talking about, I will give a bit of the context of geopolitics and technology. I will say a few words what sovereignty is actually about. Then I will talk about European policy and European initiatives like Eurostack, and say something about how do I interpret this, what it means for buyers, many of you, and for suppliers, also many of you, and some conclusions. Well, a bit about the context. We all know that the world gets ever more geopoliticized. You see this trade war and the chips war between China and the United States, with retaliation. If there's a restriction on the chips coming from the United States, then China restricts the supply of the raw materials like germanium and gallium. And you see also tariff wars. This is a famous picture, of course, of Trump, President Trump announcing these reciprocal tariffs. And the developments around the capturing of technology as a really geopolitical force, namely this example from China, but the same is for the United States, that they want to be the leader in AI. That will determine the future. And this is not only governments that are saying this, but it's also governments together with companies. So here you see this coalition of a number of leaders of big tech, together with Trump announcing this 500 billion investment in AI. The same story also in China. Also big tech in China going together with government. Something which, by the way, we see far less in Europe. So what is it about? Geopolitization, so things become geopoliticized. They are put in this picture of the relations between countries and dependency. Just a bit of illustration of that. If you look at the picture of the trade interventions, which are things like sanctions, tariffs, export controls, a rapid rise, and this is only until 2020. You know what has happened this year with the Trump announcements, and most of them are actually of a protectionist nature. So this global open marketplace seems to be disappearing. We are going to go into a direction of economic nationalism, of China first, of America first, and perhaps also of Europe first. We are going to go away from a situation that technology is freely available for everybody. No technology can be put into action in these relationships between countries as a weapon. It's the weaponization of technology, but not only of technology. Weaponization also of all kind of other things that you have in these relationships, like for example these raw materials. And political scientists always talk about the world of international relations as taking three shapes: hard realism, a more constructivist approach, things are evolving, and a more liberalism approach. So we can also work together in international organizations like the United Nations. And today we are going much more into the direction of hard realism. So essentially countries are telling to each other, are giving the signal to each other, if you win, I lose. If I win, you lose. It's a win-lose proposition. It's a zero-sum proposition, rather than what we had actually the idea in the global open market economy that everybody could win. To illustrate that a little bit, the battle for global industrial leadership is not a win-win scenario, it's a zero-sum game. This is of one of the key advisors of Xi Jinping, who's saying this. And another quote, "We are a war cabinet. We need to have a wartime philosophy, a culture in making sure that we can do things quickly and deliver results in a speedy manner." Who do you think has said this? This is Melanie Joly, the Minister of Industry of Canada. think of all countries. Canada talking about a wartime philosophy, a war cabinet. So the world is really changing. Added to that is the rise of authoritarianism, which is characterized by putting things black and white. It's them versus us. It's not about having some negotiated middle ground. Doesn't fit at all, I think, with this country, by the way. Instrumentalizing institutions, so using justice, etc., to prosecute your political enemies. The weakening of the rule of law, capturing the system of, for example, justice, the independence justice, and misinformation and disinformation. This is a bit of a funny picture. Homer is driving by and shouts something like, "I stand with Ukraine," and two guys are listening to him and are saying to each other, "What did he say? I don't know. He said something about being gay and vaccinated." So a dialogue of the deaf. It's a sad world. It's not a very optimistic story, although I will end with some more optimistic words. So how do you interpret this? You could look at it psychologically. It's the mentality of these kind of authoritarian leaders, of Xi Jinping, Putin, of Trump. Perhaps it's that they are so egocentric, they want to have power, perhaps they had a bad experience in their youth, whatever. You can also look at it as a sociological, the clash of civilizations. One type of opinion about how society and freedoms and those kind of things should function, the values, against each other. Some people are saying it's all economical. It's about who is strongest in an economic sense. That country will win. And you could look at it really geopolitical, trying to be the top dog, trying to be the top leading dominant country in the world. I think in policy making, in strategy making, in business, in governments, we need to take all these four perspectives and keep an eye on all of that. And perhaps if you don't have it today, you need to have a psychologist or a psychiatrist in your team to also interpret what is the meaning of this kind of ad hoc, erratic behavior that you see today. The other factor that I want to bring into play is about technology. So we see geopoliticization, but we see also this very rapid technology development. And to illustrate that perhaps a bit more, the time for adoption of a new technology to get to 50% adoption, the number of years has been dropping dramatically. And the most dramatic thing we saw, of course, in 2022 when ChatGPT came up. Within a few months there were 100 million of users, so a super fast adoption. And this seems to be going ever faster. So if now a new technology would come, we would actually have to count indeed in months before we have mass adoption. The other thing that you see is it gets denser as you get closer to today. More new disruptive technologies are coming. And if you extrapolate the trend, there will be 3 really disruptive technologies coming in the next 5 to 10 years. So we haven't seen the end of it yet. We are seeing AI, but what would be these next disruptions be? Is that quantum, for example? Is that edge computing? Is that bioengineering? You can fill it in yourself. Remarkable, China is leading in 57 of these 64 emerging technologies. So China has really gone into leadership. How does this affect Europe? We heard already a little bit during other sessions, including from the Major General. So how does geopolitics, this geopolitization, this rise of disruptive technology affect us in Europe? And here, us in Belgium. One is this risk of weaponization. So actually that technology is used as a weapon to exercise power onto other countries. You get it or you don't get it. I control the technology or not. And just a few examples is that if you look at social media, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like our laws about the Digital Services Act and says, calls that censorship. Whereas Europe says it's not about censorship, it's about this dangerous content that is disrupting our society. And you see this recent thing around Nexperia, the company that is producing fairly mundane chips, but got into a chips war between the Netherlands and China, which terrifies then with the spillover effect the European car industry being weaponized. China says, then if you do this, I don't give you the raw materials anymore. It's also a situation of a mix between cyber and physical attacks, and actually also the social media. So you saw that with the drones, At the same time that these drones were flying over parts of Europe, including here in Belgium, we saw that there was a pro-Russian group doing a cyber attack on the Belgian military intelligence service on the 6th of November. So a DDoS attack. So the mix of cyber and physical. And exploitation of divisions in society. Clearly happening, for example, China is, this is from a report by a European service that looks at this information, that says China is really at scale manipulating information online and interfering in variety of ways online, but also actually putting people under pressure. And it's not only China, Russia too, at scale. So this brings us to this idea of sovereignty. So one thing is, it is felt already since a while that European sovereignty is under attack, is at risk in this geopoliticized and highly technological disruptive world. This was said already in 2017 by Merkel, then the Bundespresident, because Trump started to talk about not supporting NATO, but no one of course listened to Merkel. Then not long after that, Macron took it much wider than only defense and military. He said it's not only about NATO, it's about all of our economy, society and democracy, which is under threat. No one listened to Macron, of course. Then we got Juncker, the then president of the European Commission, who talked about the hour of European sovereignty, that had come. He was heavily criticized. At least half of the press in Europe said, don't talk about sovereignty. It was a taboo. Some people said it in a more down-to-earth way, like Mark Rutte said, Europe has to become streetwise, defend its own interest. And then in 2022, the then Bundeskanzler Scholz had a speech in Prague, and 1/3 of the speech was actually called European sovereignty and was about European sovereignty. And no criticism at all. So talking about sovereignty became accepted from 2022 onwards. And look at this conference, you know, this conference could not have been held with all this attention for sovereignty about, let's say, 8 years ago, in 2017. And today we are in a Europe that looks, you might say, in a new phase. Namely, it talks a lot about sovereignty. It has a new assertiveness because Europe knows it can act, especially when there is a crisis. Europe did act when there was a COVID crisis. Within 3 months, you all got onto your mobile phone this vaccination app. So it is actually possible to do something. By the way, a billion people in the world were using that vaccination app, so not only Europeans. But there are also new uncertainties, a lot of division inside Europe and a lot of confrontation of Europe with itself. So in crisis Europe can act, and Europe has also big assets like talent, really good people, really good ideas, really an important economy, the internal market, but it's also quite insecure. Stepping back a little bit, what are we actually talking about when you say sovereignty? And people have all kinds of ideas about it, but let's keep it very simple. Sovereignty is that you decide and act about your own future as a country or as European Union. So deciding and acting on your own future, not being dependent upon others. Being able to say about your, not being dependent in the way that they can control your future. You may collaborate, but it's not about them having a say about your future is yours. And sovereignty is a nice word, but you need to be able to do something. You need to have competences, you need to know what you're talking about. If you say cloud, you need to know what cloud is, what all gets into the package. You need to have capacity, enough companies that produce cloud services, for example, or produce these chips. And you need to have control over it. You need to have control over these companies so that they are owned by Europeans. Then you can realize your sovereignty. And if I would ask a question, has Europe more sovereignty than the United States? You would probably say no. In the digital world, the United States has more sovereignty. So these three terms, control, capacity, competence, are actually coming from the military domain, because they need to have this in order to defend the country, to defend sovereignty. And that's what you call strategic autonomy. Now, you can say, how is this then in the digital domain? And then you can look at these layers of the stack. So going from the raw materials, the chips, the networks, the Internet of Things, your mobile phone, the cloud software and AI and data. And if we then look at this question, who controls the digital stack in Europe? Then looking at this picture again of these layers, and you look at the back of the room, and you see mainly American and Chinese flags. And you see the red indicates the dependency of Europe. So in AI, large language models, we have a 95% foreign dependency. 95% of the large language models and the usage of that is coming from outside Europe. In software and in cloud we have a very large foreign dependency. It's better in networks because we have more ownership there. And it's mixed picture in chips. And certainly in raw materials, certainly we are very, very dependent upon upon others. What is the situation in fact? If you count it up, over 80% of Europe's digital technologies are imported, are foreign. So we have an 80% dependency. We have a 20% independence, you might say. That's certainly not a very good situation. To illustrate it with figures, annually we, Europeans, buy for 264 billion euros cloud services in the United States. 264 billion euros. This corresponds to 2 million jobs. We are paying, all of us, 2 million jobs annually in the United States, which could be jobs here. And actually, we do have companies that are producing cloud, but perhaps we don't buy enough from them. Think about a Schwarz IT, for example. Also a hyperscaler. So people are talking about it. Can we improve this situation? Can we get more digital autonomy in Europe? And there are various initiatives there and policies. Let me just mention one initiative that got a lot of headway over the last 6 months, essentially, Eurostack. Eurostack is an initiative that looks at the stack, out of which McKinsey, for example, says this is the right moment in time to do something like this. This is Europe's moonshot moment. What is it about? It's about creating a European alternative for digital sovereignty, so having actually more of these components of the stack. That's a modern industrial policy. It says if we do good work in doing research and innovation, let's also buy what we finance in Europe. So we are great in quantum technologies, let's also buy these quantum technologies. We did a lot of the basic internet, let's also buy that. We are doing identity management systems, let's buy European identity systems. Let's also sell that internationally. So we do also international policy with that. And actually says it's not about losing your sovereignty. It's actually if you work together in Europe, you win at all sides. You would not want to do cyber security on your own. You want to do it in collaboration. It's a triple win, in fact. It's not a protectionist policy. It's actually saying we can very well work together with others, with like-minded, as long as they don't threaten our sovereignty. As long as they don't threaten our sovereignty, we can work together with other countries. It's about building this common digital stack with a lot of attention also for open source and common data. Digital services for all of us, for example, the identity management systems or the business wallet. That's going to come, sovereign AI and cloud, and Europe first. And certainly also thinking about the next generation. Quantum technologies, edge computing, robotics, and what have you. Now, Eurostack is not an organized movement and a big kind of industry coalition or so, although there's a lot of industry that is supporting this. It's actually a reference frame for taking public policy further. And if we look at, and it was, by the way, very much endorsed at the summit just exactly a week ago in Berlin, a Franco-German summit, where Merz, for example, explicitly embraced Eurostack. If we look at EU policy is becoming ever more about sovereignty and strategic autonomy. So there are many, many kind of areas like competitiveness, defense, preparedness. They are all mentioning sovereignty and strategic autonomy. So that's kind of good. Europe is aware. It has really become Chefsache, this digital sovereignty, technological sovereignty. It was also very much in the European Council. It's part of the digital omnibus that came out last week. But you can still wonder, is this good enough? Europe does remain in a weak position. And so if we are in a weak position, what would you do? Would you say, well, let's give up, let's muddle through, let's not do everything? That's the second possibility. Let's focus on something and hope that others become dependent upon us so that we have a negotiating position internationally. Or let's do this digital stack together with like-minded countries. We can do it together. You can think about it, what you would choose, what would you advise. But let me give some ideas about what this might mean for buyers and suppliers. So if you are a buyer of digital technologies, one thing is you can give yourself as an individual in your own organization much more choice. You can say, like I did, buy a Fairphone, a European-made phone, which by the way you can also de-Google. So you are no longer in the whole tracking and tracing that Google and all its advertisement can do. You can use, if you look at your AI, surely lots of you are using ChatGPT or Gemini, but you can also use Mistral or Lumo. By the way, Lumo promising that none of your questions and data will be shared, so it's completely private. And you can just put it on your phone, it's for free. So at least we can as an individual already make a choice. As an organization, what we can do is we can go more sovereign. For example, we can also sharpen the conditions that we put in cloud procurement so that yes, we have to be practical and pragmatic. We want to have business continuity today, but we can also work for more digital autonomy tomorrow. So what we can do, for example, is make sure that we work with European cloud providers so that even if they cannot deliver the cloud that you want to have today, you can buy that cloud from them tomorrow so that they develop that in a partnership with you. And you get more digital autonomy tomorrow. And certainly one of the things that you also need to do is then keep an eye, if you are a critical service provider and you are falling under the NIS2 directive, keep an eye on your obligations. In the risk management approach, you have to watch the confidentiality of your information, integrity, and also the availability of your systems. Are your systems going to be available when someone gets in their head that perhaps they will turn off the support of that foreign cloud provider? Are you still going to get security updates? Even if it is so-called open source, if you don't get the security updates because, say, Trump says, thou shalt no longer deliver this to this company, what then happens is that you are double vulnerable. First of all, you don't get the security updates, and secondly, the hackers know that you don't get them. So you are a target. So you have to watch your availability. You have to also think probably wider, because we are Europeans, and so this is also about the jobs and the innovation in Europe. If you always buy everything, you're not part of the innovation ecosystem. And the innovation system is going to extend from the cloud into AI. And you can give a priority, for example, especially I would advise the buyers of critical European digital infrastructures like eID and the business wallet that is coming up. Let's buy European there so that we have this independence and this digital autonomy. And only if we can't, by exception, we would not buy European. And companies are doing that. You see that the International Criminal Court has ditched Microsoft Office. The Austrian Ministry of Economy is moving towards a European solution, has moved. The federal state of Schleswig-Holstein, I think with 35,000 civil servants, has moved completely to European Office solutions, away from Microsoft. So get more choice, buy sovereign, and have this as a future-oriented policy. The supplier side, if you're a supplier of solutions, I would say digital autonomy is actually quite a good marketing proposition. Look at this event. Everybody is talking about it. Someone said this morning that there is a massive and explosive growth of the interest in digital sovereignty. And so provide true digital autonomy that really is honest, is true, is not sovereignty washing, and is clear to the customer. You do get this availability, you do get this data integrity, this data confidentiality. This is how we will deal with the Cloud Act. This is how we can be resistant against sanctions. Generally, raise your insights in geopolitics and technology, how they interact. Nowadays, many companies are setting up something like a geopolitical risk observatory, a good idea to do so. And join in European initiatives. So more choice, truly sovereign, strategic direction. Public policy, to finish with that. or well, a bit more, can also promote digital autonomy and measure it, have a scoreboard, negotiate and work in public procurement to give a boost to European solutions, and have a comprehensive policy, so not only research, investment, but also public procurement, also international promotion. And continue to stand by our long-term vision, because this is about more than economics. It's also about the way we want to organize our democracy and our society. Think of what Mark Zuckerberg said, attacking our society, or J.D. Vance. So this is existential for Europe. It's important for us as Europeans. It's also important for your children. If we are not part of this digital world and have it in our hands, your children are not going to get these AI jobs. They are going to be created in China and the United States. Conclusion. Get insight in your digital autonomy. How far are you? Be realistic, because business continues today, but prepare for a more sovereign future. So take also, while you buy today, concrete action, work with European providers to be stronger in digital autonomy tomorrow, and put it in your contract so that you can switch from one provider to another. And finally, I would say, ask yourself, what is it that you yourself can do at home, in the office, in public policy, to strengthen our sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Timmers. I see that we have a bit of time for some Q&A, so is there any question in the room?
My question is, why do we use more from the States than from Europe? What is the main reason?
There are, of course, several reasons, and one of that is I think we dropped the ball in the past. We were really in Europe, and I've been working in the European Commission in this thinking of the open global market economy, being open to the world, and the world is not so nice that we can be open to the world. So it's perhaps a lack of sense of hard realism. The other is, which is hampering us, is the fragmentation in the internal market. So it's difficult to build up a very large market scale. If you're a Belgian cloud providers, you will get into some barriers when you go into other countries. And these big companies, they have it easier, the big tech, to serve the big market, having already the back, in the back, the American big market or the Chinese big market. So fragmentation, and we should definitely overcome that. Capital is another issue. Capital market is not functioning as easily in Europe, especially for scale-ups, as it is in the United States. And once you have deep pockets, you will spend a lot of money trying to keep politics going in that direction. Think of the 5 billion that Google invested in the data center in Wallonia. You know, 5 billion sounds a lot, and how much was that? 300 jobs. You know, we may be impressed, but for them it's peanuts, and it's actually peanuts in terms of the number of jobs. So we should not fool ourselves. We should also be very kind of sober. Laat je niet gek maken.
Thank you. I see that we are running out of time, so I suggest if you want to continue the discussion with Professor Timmers, feel free to do it after this session. Thank you again for your attendance. Thank you very much, Professor Timmers, for this excellent keynote, and let's enjoy the rest of Think Next.
Proximus Next. Tech Biz People.